It was 2 days before the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The religious leaders who collaborated with the Roman occupation were conspiring against Jesus. They had gathered in the palace of Caiaphas, the high priest. This man had received the high priesthood at the hands of Valerius Gratus, the former Roman governor, and now retained the office under Pontius Pilate. They all were planning to arrest and destroy Jesus quietly, so as to avoid a popular revolt among the Jews. At this time, Jesus was lodging at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper. While he was there, a woman approached and anointed him with an alabaster jar of pure nard. When his disciples saw the act, they were outraged.
Why this waste?
Such costly ointment might have been sold for a large sum and given to the poor.
Why do you bother the woman? The poor are always with you. Indeed, I tell you that wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will be told in her memory.
Then one of the 12, named Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot, went to the priests and asked,
"What will you give me if I deliver Jesus to you, the governor?"
When they heard the offer, they were glad and promised Judas 30 pieces of silver. From that hour, he sought an opportunity to betray Jesus. At the beginning of the feast, when the Passover lamb was sacrificed, the disciples of Jesus approached him and asked,
"Where do you wish us to prepare the Paschal meal?"
Go into the city, and you will see there a man carrying a water jar. He will show you a suitable place.
The two did as Jesus commanded. They entered the city where they found the man with the water jar, who brought them to a large upper room. When evening had come, Jesus arrived with the 12. While they were eating, he said,
I tell you truly that one of you is going to betray me.
The disciples were stunned with grief.
Surely not I.
Nor I.
Nor I.
The betrayer is one of you, dipping his hand in the dish with me. The Son of Man is fulfilling Scripture. But woe to that one through whom the Son of Man is betrayed.
Then Judas slipped out into the night. As they were eating, Jesus took bread. After reciting the blessing, he broke it and gave it to his disciples.
Take, eat, this is my body.
Then, taking the cup with the traditional blessing, he gave it to his disciples.
This is my blood of the covenant, which is being shed for many. I tell you in truth that I shall not drink again from the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it fresh from the kingdom of God.
Then, having sung a hymn, they left the city for the Mount of Olives. As they walked, Jesus said to his disciples,
You will all desert me this very night. So it is written in the prophet Zechariah, Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered.
Though all desert, I will remain by you.
I tell you truly that in this very night, before the cock crows twice, you shall deny me 3 times.
Even though I must die with you, I will never deny you.
And so declared all the disciples.
Trees, it was for me, O Lord, when you cried upon your knees, how could it be, O Lord, when in blood and sweat and tears you dismissed your final fears, when you faced the soldiers' spears, you stood for me. their triumph looked complete, it was for me, O Lord. When it seemed like your defeat they could not see, O Lord. When you faced the mob alone, you were silent as a storm, and a tree became your throne. You came for me, O When you stumbled up the road, you walked for me, O Lord. When you took your deadly load, that heavy tree, O Lord. When they lifted you on high, and they nailed you out to die, and when darkness filled the sky, it was for me, O
Jesus halted at an olive grove called Gethsemane. Then, going apart with Peter, James, and John, he left them on watch and continued a little further alone. There he fell on his face in anguished prayer. Soon he returned to the three on watch and found them sleeping.
Could you not watch with me for just 1 hour? Watch and pray that you are not put to the test. For the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Again, Jesus went apart in troubled prayer, and again he returned to find the disciples sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. A third time Jesus withdrew to pray, and a third time he found the disciples sleeping.
Sleep on and finish your rest. Now is the time for the Son of Man to be delivered into the hands of sinners. Here comes my betrayer.
Jesus had not finished speaking before Judas, one of his own disciples, arrived with a group of Roman soldiers and other armed men from the temple. Now the betrayer had arranged with the authorities for a sign and had said,
The man whom I kiss is the one you want.
in accordance with this arrangement, Judas went directly to Jesus.
Greetings, Master.
Then he gave him the kiss.
Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?
Immediately the soldiers laid hands on Jesus and held him fast. Then one of the disciples with Jesus drew his sword and cut off an ear from the slave of the high priest.
Sheathe your sword. All who take up sword will perish by the sword. Do you not know that I can call upon God, who will respond at once with more than 12 legions of angels?
Then turning to the mob, Jesus continued,
Have you come for me as against a rebel bandit with swords and clubs? Why did you not seize me in the temple, where I sat teaching by day? Were you so afraid of the Jewish people that you must come for me by stealth? Nevertheless, your actions are fulfilling the words of the prophets.
Then all of his disciples forsook him and fled. Those who had seized Jesus brought him to Caiaphas, whom the Romans had made high priest. Peter followed at a distance as far as the courtyard. There he sat with the attendants and warmed himself by the fire. The high priest had gathered his whole council, and they began to arrange the case against Jesus, which they would present to Pontius Pilate, the governor. The charge was that Jesus claimed to be king of the Jews, and they brought in many false witnesses, but to no avail. Finally, two came forward.
We heard this man say, I will tear down this temple made with hands.
And within 3 days, build another not made with hands.
The testimony was evidence that Jesus claimed an authority over temple affairs, which traditionally belonged to the rulers of Israel. And in those days, Israel was ruled from Rome. Yet even these witnesses were unable to agree on their testimony. Finally, Caiaphas stood up and examined Jesus directly.
Have you no answer to these charges?
Jesus remained silent and answered nothing. Then the high priest put the question of kingship in terms of the royal titles anointed and Son of God.
Are you the anointed one, the Son of the Blessed?
I am, and you shall see the Son of Man seated on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven.
What need have we of witnesses? He has condemned himself.
They all concurred that Jesus was indeed worthy of death. Then those holding Jesus began to spit on him. They covered his face and were striking him as they taunted him.
Oh, anointed one.
Prophesy who it is who is striking you.
No, Peter was warming himself in the courtyard when a small slave girl entered. She confronted Peter and said,
You also were with this Jesus the Nazarene.
I do not know what you are talking about.
Peter went outside into the gateway. Meanwhile, the cock crowed. The slave girl followed him out and said to the bystanders,
This man is one of them.
Again, Peter denied knowing Jesus. After a little while, the bystanders said directly to Peter,
Surely you are one of them, for you speak with a Galilean accent.
Then Peter began to swear with an oath.
I do not know this person of whom you are speaking.
But the cock interrupted him as it crowed for the second time. Immediately, Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him, Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. He went out and wept bitterly. When morning arrived, all of the chief priests, along with the other Roman collaborators, bound Jesus and delivered him over to Pontius Pilate, the imperial Roman governor. When Judas saw what was happening, he knew that Jesus was doomed and repented. He returned the 30 pieces of silver to the priests.
I have sinned in betraying innocent blood.
What is that to us?
That is your affair.
Judas threw down the 30 pieces of silver in the temple. Then he went out and hanged himself. Picking up the silver pieces, the priest said,
It is unlawful to put this silver into the treasury, for it is blood money.
Whereupon they used the money to buy the potter's field for the burial of strangers. Therefore that field is known to this day as the field of blood. Jesus stood before the Roman governor as the accusers made their charge.
We found this man perverting our nation.
He was forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor and proclaiming himself anointed king.
Are you the king of the Jews?
You say so.
Priests were accusing him of many things.
Have you no answer to give? Look at how many accusations they are making.
Jesus astonished Pilate by remaining silent. At that festival, the governor used to release a prisoner, and some were urging Pilate to do so at this time. Now there was a notable rebel in prison with those who had committed murder during the insurrection. His name was Jesus Barabbas. Therefore, the priests arranged a demonstration to demand Barabbas.
Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus the Anointed One?
Barabbas! Barabbas!
What shall I do then with Jesus, the Anointed One?
Crucify him. Crucify him.
Are you certain of his guilt?
The crowd took up the chant.
Crucify
Crucify him. Crucify him.
Crucify
him.
Shall I crucify your king?
We have no
king
but
Caesar.
Then Pilate agreed to release Jesus Barabbas. But Jesus, the anointed king, he handed over to his soldiers for scourging and crucifixion.
Come now to the trial of Jesus. Hear the charges and the lies. Though it's clear he is an innocent man, still he will be crucified. See them strip his garments from him, strip away his dignity. They place the purple robe upon him and crown him king of suffering. They swing the cross upon his shoulder, march him up that barren road. See every step become a struggle. Watch him fall beneath the They lay him down with arms extended, nailing to that cursed tree. Raise him high upon his awful throne. Behold the King of suffering. Behold the King of suffering. Behold the Through the silence hear his groaning. Hear him struggle as he breathes. And soon he'll whisper with his final breath, "It is finished." He will die, the King of suffering. He will die, the King of suffering.
The soldiers led Jesus away within the governor's palace. There they assembled the whole battalion. They clothed Jesus in royal purple. They set down a crown of thorns upon his head and shoved a reed between his fingers for a scepter. They began to mock him by kneeling before him.
Hail, King of the Jews.
They also spat upon him and smote him on the head with a stick. Then, after mocking him, they took away the purple, returned his own clothes, and brought him out to crucify him. On the road, they met an African of Cyrene named Simon. coming in from the countryside. Him they compelled to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means skull. There they crucified him. It was 9 a.m. They offered him wine, mingled with myrrh, but he refused it. His garments they divided among themselves, casting lots for them. Over his head they inscribed the charge against him, King of the Jews. Also, there were 2 insurrectionists crucified with him, one to his right and one to his left. Those who passed by were shaking their heads in derision.
So you would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days?
Save yourself. Come down from the cross.
Likewise, the priestly collaborators mocked him.
He saved
saved
others himself. He cannot save.
Let the anointed one, the King of Israel, come down from the cross that we may see and believe.
Even the 2 crucified with him reviled him. Now from the midday there was darkness over the whole land until 3 p.m. At that hour Jesus cried out in a loud voice,
Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Look, he is calling for Elijah.
One of them put a sponge full of vinegar on a stick and laid it to his lips.
Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down.
Then Jesus, having uttered a loud cry, breathed his last breath. Suddenly the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from the top to the bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. Even the tombs of the dead were opened. Now when the centurion on watch and the others who were with him saw all that was taking place, they were filled with awe.
This man truly was God's royal son.